My earliest memory is the smell of rain and blood. I was 7 years old, standing barefoot at the top of a marble staircase, while men carried a body through the front doors of our mansion. Water dripped from their black coats onto the polished floor. One of them was bleeding from the mouth. Another had a broken nose twisted sideways. Nobody spoke. At the center of it all stood my father. Perfectly calm, perfectly clean, as if violence itself bent around him out of respect. He looked up and saw me watching. For a second, something softened in his face. Then he said quietly, "Go back to your room." I didn't move. My eyes stayed fixed on the blood trailing across the floor like red ribbons. One of the men carrying the body glanced at me nervously. "Boss, the kid." "She needs to learn," my father interrupted. Learn. That word followed me through my entire childhood. I learned that men who smiled too much were dangerous. I learned that loyalty could be bought, but fear lasted longer. I learned that people disappeared every day in our city, and nobody asked questions if they wanted to survive. And most importantly, I learned that love was a weakness no one in our world could afford. My father ruled the Black Dragon Syndicate like a king born from war. Politicians bowed to him in private. Police officers answered his phone calls before their own wives. Entire neighborhoods survived because he allowed them to. And because of that, everyone feared him, including me. But fear is a strange thing when it comes from your own father. It mixes with admiration, with longing, with the desperate need to be seen. He wasn't cruel to me. That would have been easier. Cruel men are simple. My father loved me in the only way a man like him knew how, by building walls around me high enough to keep the world out. Or maybe to keep me in. I grew up inside a mansion that looked more like a fortress than a home. Security cameras watched every hallway. Armed guards stood outside every gate. Bulletproof cars waited outside before sunrise every morning. Most girls my age worried about school dances. I knew how to identify different calibers of guns by sound. And yet, somehow, despite all of that violence surrounding me, I stayed painfully soft inside. I liked old books, piano music, sunsets. I cried over stray cats and pressed flowers between pages of novels. My father used to look at me with something close to disappointment. "You were born in the wrong world," he told me once. Maybe he was right. Then Kang arrived. I was 16. It was winter, cold enough for fog to cling to the windows every morning. I remember walking downstairs one evening and finding a stranger standing beside my father in the study. Tall, broad-shouldered, dressed entirely in black. He stood with his hands behind his back, expression unreadable, eyes lowered respectfully toward my father. But there was something unsettling about him, not because he looked violent. Men around my father always looked violent. No. What unsettled me was how empty he seemed, like someone had hollowed him out years ago and left only survival behind. "This is Kang," my father said. "He'll be joining my security detail." Kang nodded once toward me. "Miss." His voice was low, calm, controlled. The kind of voice that never accidentally reveals emotion. I don't know why I kept thinking about him afterward. Maybe because he never tried to impress me. Every man in my father's circle treated me carefully, like I was glass or a loaded weapon. They laughed too hard at my jokes, complimented me constantly, looked at me the way people look at valuable things. Kang never did. To him, I was simply someone he was assigned to protect. Nothing more. At least that's what I told myself. For months, he existed only at the edges of my life. Always there, opening car doors, standing behind my father during meetings, escorting me through crowded events while keeping one hand close enough to his jacket to reach the gun beneath it in less than a second. Silent, watching everything. I started noticing little things about him. The scar beneath his chin, the way he never drank alcohol, no matter how late the meetings lasted, how he checked every room before I entered it, how he always positioned himself between me and exits without even thinking about it. And his eyes. God, his eyes. They carried exhaustion so deep it felt ancient, like he had seen too much of humanity and survived anyway. The first time we truly spoke was on my 17th birthday. The mansion was drowning in wealth that night. Crystal chandeliers, expensive perfume, men discussing murder over champagne like it was business strategy. I hated every second of it. So I slipped away to the balcony with a cigarette stolen from one of the guests. I didn't even smoke. I just wanted to feel reckless for once. Cold air wrapped around me as I leaned against the railing and lit it with trembling fingers. You're holding it wrong. I turned. Kong stood near the doorway, hands in his pockets. You've been watching me? It's my job. I took a drag anyway. Immediately regretted it. The smoke burned my throat so badly I doubled over coughing. For the first time since I'd known him, amusement flickered across his face. Small, brief, but real. He walked toward me, took the cigarette gently from my hand, and crushed it beneath his shoe. That doesn't suit you. Embarrassment turned into irritation. And what exactly does? He studied me quietly for a moment, then said, freedom. The word hit me harder than it should have, because nobody had ever looked at me and seen a trapped person before. They saw privilege, power, luxury. But Kang saw the cage. And somehow, that terrified me more than anything. After that night, something shifted between us. Not dramatically, not all at once. Just enough for me to start noticing when he entered a room. Enough for silence between us to become intimate instead of awkward. Sometimes I'd find him awake at 3 a.m, sitting alone in the kitchen, with black coffee growing cold beside him. You don't sleep? I asked once. Not much. Why? His expression darkened slightly. People who sleep deeply die quickly in my world. I should have walked away then. Any sane girl would have. But I was already falling in love with him, even if I didn't know it yet. It happened slowly, then all at once. The war began that spring. The White Eagles moved into our territory, and suddenly the city felt like it was rotting from the inside out. Bombings, shootings, bodies dumped in rivers. Every week another funeral. My father became colder, more paranoid. Men with rifles began patrolling the estate day and night. And Kang became even quieter than before. One night, gunfire erupted outside my bedroom. The windows exploded inward before I could even sit up. Kang burst through the door. Down. He threw himself over me, just as bullets tore through the walls behind us. Glass rained across the floor. I remember the smell of gunpowder, the deafening sound of his gun firing back, and underneath all of it, his heartbeat against my cheek, strong, steady, alive, even while death surrounded us. Afterward, when the attackers were gone, and the house was silent again, I realized my hands were shaken uncontrollably. Kang knelt in front of me. You're safe. I looked at the blood running down his arm. You're hurt. It's nothing. It's a bullet wound. I've had worse. That answer broke something inside me, because he said it so casually, like pain had become normal to him, like surviving was the only thing he allowed himself to care about. I touched his hand before I could stop myself. And for one dangerous second, he let me. The air changed instantly. His jaw tightened. My pulse stuttered. Neither of us moved. Then he pulled away. That was the moment I knew. I loved him. Completely. Hopelessly. And loving him felt exactly like standing too close to the edge of a building. Terrifying. Impossible. Addictive. The first time I confessed, it was raining. Of course it was raining. Every heartbreaking moment in my life seemed to happen beneath storm clouds. Kong stood beneath the back terrace after returning from a meeting downtown. Blood stained the collar of his white shirt. Not his blood. That somehow made it worse. "You should rest," he told me quietly. "Do you ever get tired?" His expression flickered. Tired of what? This life. He looked away toward the rain. For a long moment, neither of us spoke. Then he said softly, "Every day." The honesty in his voice nearly destroyed me. I stepped closer. "So leave." His eyes snapped back to mine. "You think people like me get to leave?" "Yes." "No." He smiled faintly, but there was no happiness in it. "Men like me only leave in coffins." "Don't say that." "It's the truth." "I don't care about the truth." My voice broke. "I care about you." Silence. Rain hammered against the roof above us. And then, before fear could stop me, I whispered, "I love you." Kong went completely still. Not shocked, not angry, just devastated. Like hearing those words hurt him more than a bullet ever could. Finally, he closed his eyes. "You shouldn't." But it was already too late. Because my heart had belonged to him long before either of us admitted it.